Have you ever gotten a speeding ticket? It's a pain, right? You pay it, you move on. But what if that one ticket just refused to go away? What if it spiraled into a legal battle that lasted for almost a decade with multiple trials, appeals, and even jail time? Well, that's exactly what we're looking at today. The incredible story of one man, his red Mustang, and an 8-year legal saga that really makes you ask, what is justice anyway?
And this is the number that started it all. 218 kilometers per hour. To put that in perspective for you, that is well over 135 miles per hour. So yeah, this wasn't just some minor speeding ticket. In the eyes of the law, this was seriously dangerous stuff.
The thing is, this all happened way back in 2011. But the final judgment, the one we're digging into, wasn't handed down until 2019. 8 years. I mean, think about that. That's a lifetime for a traffic violation, which really begs the question,
after all that time, all those lawyers, and all that courtroom drama, did the system actually get it right in the end? Was the final result fair? That's what we're here to figure out.
Okay, so let's rewind and start at the beginning. The incident itself, pretty straightforward. One car, one road, one incredibly high speed. The legal journey that came after, though, well, that was anything but simple.
Just look at how tangled this whole thing got. It starts in 2011, he gets convicted, even serves jail time. But then, plot twist, that conviction gets overturned on appeal. Years just vanish. A new trial doesn't even start until 2017. He gets convicted again in 2018, and that leads to the final appeal in 2019 that we're talking about today. It's a real legal marathon.
So, in this final appeal, the defense came out swinging. They had a two-part strategy. First up, get the guilty verdict tossed out completely. Their whole argument was that the retrial was just fundamentally unfair from the get-go.
So they show up with 4 main arguments, and each one was basically a shot at trying to poke a hole in the case, hoping to invalidate the whole conviction. Let's see how that went for them.
Well, to put it mildly, it did not go well. The appeal judge didn't just disagree. She systematically took their case apart piece by piece.
First, they tried a classic jurisdiction argument. Hey, you tried us in the wrong city! But the judge was like, nope. The officer's testimony was super clear. He was right on the border, and the speeding absolutely happened in Durham. She called it a contrived ground of appeal, which is pretty much the judge's way of saying, nice try, but that's a ridiculous argument.
Next up, they claimed a prosecution was hiding evidence, a key police dispatch tape. The only problem? There was zero evidence this tape ever even existed. The officer testified he'd never even made a call to dispatch. It's kind of hard to hide something that was never there to begin with.
Then they moved on to a second officer who showed up after the fact, claiming his notes weren't disclosed. But get this, the defense themselves had asked for the trial to be delayed specifically so they could get this officer to testify, and then they just did nothing. They never followed up. The judge called that one entirely speculative.
And this last one is really something. The defense actually argued it was unfair that the trial went on without them, but the judge pointed out they had almost a full year to prepare for a court date they themselves had requested, and then they just didn't show up. She called it a flagrant disregard for the court.
And with that, bam, the judge shut it all down. The conviction stands. John Black is guilty, period. And you'd think that would be the end of it, right? Case closed. But no. This is where the story takes a really unexpected turn. Okay, so plan A, getting the conviction thrown out, failed spectacularly, so the defense switches gears. Now they argue that, okay, fine, he's guilty, but his punishment, way too harsh. Now, given his history, this seemed like a real long shot.
And you can see why. I mean, look at this record. The judge literally called him a menace on the roadway. We're talking 26 years of bad driving, 15 speeding convictions, 2 for careless driving, and the craziest part? Even after serving jail time for this offense, he went right back out and got more speeding tickets. Unbelievable.
And yet, despite this truly awful driving record, the appeal judge looks at his sentence and says, nope, there's a fundamental legal error here. The conviction was solid, but the punishment, it was flawed.
So what was the mistake? It all comes down to a really important legal idea, the principle of a fair sentence, where every single relevant factor has to be taken into account.
And the change was pretty significant? Take a look. The original sentence was a $6,000 fine and a 2-year license suspension.
The appeal judge knocked the fine down and slashed the suspension from 24 months all the way down to 9. So, why the huge change?
Here it is. This is the whole reason. The trial judge, when handing down the second sentence, didn't properly account for the punishment Black had already served years ago from that first conviction, the one that got overturned. He'd already done 12 days in jail and had his license taken away for 9 months for this exact same crime.
In legal terms, this is called an error in principle. It's basically when a judge makes a fundamental mistake in their legal reasoning. In this case, they completely fail to consider a super relevant factor, time already served.
And, an appeal court can't just change a sentence because they disagree with it. The bar for doing that is incredibly high. As the ruling says, they can only step in if there was an error in principle or if the sentence was just clearly wrong. And by not accounting for the time he'd already served, the trial judge hit that very high bar.
And that's really the key takeaway from this whole 8-year ordeal. Even for someone the court itself called a menace, the rules still have to apply. The system has to be fair. It has to give credit where credit is due to make sure that no one gets punished twice for the same thing.
So it leaves us with this final, really challenging question. This decision wasn't about being lenient or forgiving him. It was about legal math and following the rules. But it really makes you think, how do we balance protecting the public from dangerous people with making sure every single person, no matter what they've done, gets a sentence that is by the book, procedurally and technically fair? It's a tough one to answer.